Hello there. Welcome to my campfire. My name is Seraphine, the Midnight Bard. It is my job to travel from place to place, seeking the strange, the bizarre, and the unexplained. They say that home is where the family is. Some of the happiest memories people can recount are those of their youth, when they were surrounded by family and friends. These heartwarming memories collectively grow to shape an idealized image of what home should be. But what if there was something in this image that was not welcome? A stain on the idea of a perfect and loving family life. I was once approached by a person haunted by one such entity. Please listen, they said, and I will tell you about my experience at Hell House. My older sister bought a house a couple of weeks after my 18th birthday. The house itself was beautiful. It had an old country style and a rustic theme to it, which I personally enjoyed. The house was out in the middle of the country. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles up the old dirt road, and you couldn't see the house from the highway it was by. That was my favorite part about it. But still, it was peaceful. Now, the house had a basement that was fully furnished. It had its own kitchen, a living room, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. That was cool as hell. The basement also had 3 doors for cars and a nice little workshop. The upstairs part of the house had 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, a large kitchen, a dining room, and a computer room with double doors that locked not only on the door handle, but with an old-fashioned lock at the top of the door on the inside of the room. The washer and dryer was in a corner by the side door on the house. It was just beyond the kitchen. There was a small little deck on the front side of the house which faced the highway that couldn't be seen because of a field that was in front of it, and a small deck on the side of the house where the side door was that led out into the yard. There was a very large deck on the back of the house. I'm not sure how tall it was, but I know that you had to go down 22 stairs if you wanted to get down to the driveway. The house itself was incredible, and no one could believe that the previous owner wanted to sell it, yet they had their reasons. Their reasoning was that they had wanted to travel across the country in their RV because they were both retired and it was a lifelong dream of theirs. Oh well, it was one hell of a deal for my sister. My other 2 siblings and I stayed at the house for the first time about 2 days after my sister and her husband had finished moving in. My older sister and I had cooked dinner while everyone else explored the house. I had already seen it due to the fact that I was the first one that she had showed it to aside from her husband. We all ate dinner together in the dining room, in celebration of their newest milestone in life, and I played with my 5-year-old nephew and 2-year-old niece. We all stood out on the deck for a while after putting the kids to bed. It was so that my sister and I could have a cigarette before heading in to drink and play cards. It was, in all honesty, a perfect way to help my sister and her husband finish unpacking. The night went on as any normal night we all would be together. My younger brother, younger sister, and I slept in the computer room that night, since it was pretty spacious and we wouldn't wake up the kids. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. I was and still am an intuitive person, in touch with my spirituality and such. I can assess any situation just by the feel of the atmosphere. However, that house did not give me any bad vibes at first. I wish it would have, because I never would have stepped one foot into that place had I known what was going to happen the following year. There are reasons that will remain unknown, but I moved in with my older sister a month before I graduated high school. Now, you have to understand that living out in the country meant that I had spotty cell phone reception. I didn't have my driver's license and I didn't have a car, so after my sister's mother-in-law would pick me up from school, as well as my niece and nephew, and take us home, I would have to take care of them because her husband slept during the day. He worked from 10 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning. Imagine how difficult it was at 18 years old trying to take care of 2 small children, cooking dinner, cleaning the house, and doing laundry while trying to finish my homework. It was absolutely challenging, but somehow I managed to do it. There was a particular night about 2 weeks after I had moved in that started everything. My niece and nephew were in the living room watching cartoons and playing with their toys while I was in the kitchen cooking dinner. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening, which was the normal time for dinner. I would peek my head out of the kitchen every once in a while to check on the kids. I could hear them laughing and playing, so I would go back to cooking. This was happening for about 30 minutes before I felt someone tugging on my shirt. I looked down with a smile, thinking it was my niece wanting more juice, but there was no one there. My heart began to beat faster as I peeked my head into the living room to see the kids still playing with their toys and watching cartoons. I shook off the weird incident, chalking it up to being my imagination and my worry about being home alone with the kids. I finished cooking dinner, fed both of the kids, and tried to do my homework in the living room, but I had an uneasy feeling the rest of the night. It felt like someone was watching me. That was just the first of many strange things to take place in that fucking house. The next incident happened a few weeks later. My bedroom was next to the side door of the house and directly across from the back door leading to the deck. I had always had an odd fear about doors being opened, which is silly, I know, but it legitimately freaks me the heck out. My older sister was in the living room watching TV and drinking a glass of wine to try and wind down after a long day at work. The children were in bed, and I was in my bedroom trying to finish my homework, despite it being a Friday night. I had the television in my bedroom. Law and Order was playing in the background, even though I had my headphones in with my rock music blasting loudly. I was so occupied with getting my probability and statistics homework done that I hadn't noticed the handle of my bedroom door twisting and turning. I heard a very distant banging on something, which caused me to take one earbud out. No noise. I put the earbud back in, and when another bang sounded, I took both earbuds out this time, listening carefully to the weird noises just outside of my room. There was the sound of scratching, which scared the holy hell out of me. I looked back at my clock on the shelf above my bed to see that it was midnight, when my 5-year-old nephew screamed and came running into my bedroom. I asked him what was wrong, and the only thing the little man said was he didn't want to sleep in his bedroom because of the man in his closet. It took an hour and a half for me to calm him down, but he finally fell asleep on my bed while I stayed up the rest of the night watching TV and listening for any strange noises. I would occasionally step out onto the back deck with my older sister to have a cigarette, but again, my room was directly across from the front door, so we were able to keep an eye on my nephew. The third incident to happen was the following day. It was Saturday, and I was down in the basement trying to clean up and help my sister unpack when the atmosphere suddenly felt ominous, like something bad was about to happen. We were listening to music, dancing around and watching the kids play with their toys. I don't remember exactly what I was doing at the particular moment that I felt something touch the back of my neck, but I turned around to swat at the person because I thought it was my sister. My family likes to play jokes on each other as often as possible, especially when the other person isn't expecting it. Again, no one was there. I went back to what I was doing, and 5 minutes later, something roughly tugged on the hood of my jacket. There was no one behind me, and that was when I realized that my sister and the kids had went upstairs. I was completely alone in the cold-ass basement. I grabbed my phone, ran out of the room and up the stairs to the kitchen. My sister asked me what the hell happened. I told her and she just shrugged. Yeah, it sounds absolutely insane, but I swear to everything holy, this shit actually happened. The entire summer passed like that. Weird little things happening here and there, but nothing major. My nephew still refused to sleep in his room because of the man in his closet. My niece developed a liking and disliking of her bedroom. Her closet door would not shut no matter how many times someone would close the door. My niece would play in her room alone during the day, but would wake up in the middle of the night crying and screaming bloody murder until somebody would take her out of her crib. I had given up my bed by that point, to let my niece and nephew sleep in it while I slept on the floor. I didn't mind having them in my room with me, considering that I made them feel safe, and my nerves were calmer when it was my responsibility to make sure that they stayed safe and secure. August came around, and it was time for me to go to college. I packed up everything I would need and headed off for the first time by myself. Mind you, I still didn't have a car, so that was a fun day of moving into the dorms. I figured that college was the perfect time to get away from all the weird things happening in that house. Yet, the strange things started happening there too. Something had followed me to school, and it eventually took its toll on me. I would wake up in the middle of the night to loud banging on the front door of my dorm. I would go outside to smoke a cigarette after realizing that no one was there. My roommates and I thought that it was just the stupid boys on the football team messing with us, since the girls in the room above us were dating some of them, but that wasn't the case. I didn't go back home on weekends the first month that I was at college. I liked the fact that I was on my own, and that I had the dorm room all to myself while my roommates went home. The stupid weird shit intensified when I was alone for the weekends. I wouldn't sleep at all, and began to miss my morning classes at the start of each week. It got to a point that I tried to avoid going to the dorm room whenever I had the chance. I did not want to be in the dorm room alone after that first month. My roommates and I decided that it was the best idea that at least 2 people stay for the weekend. That way, no one would be alone when the odd things happened. They started noticing the shit too. I mean, how does a computer move around when every person in the dorm room was in class? It doesn't. We were the only 4 people with a key to our room, so there's no way that it was someone else trying to play a prank on us. Our closet doors started to slide open during the night. The bathroom faucet would turn on at 3:30 every morning, and all of the cabinets and doors would be open when we woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. My roommates and I all had enough of that stupid shit by the time the end of the semester came around. I only attended college for that one semester due to reasons that are not going to be revealed. December rolled around, which allowed me to clear things out of my dorm room. I packed up the car and headed home for the holiday break. I hadn't really thought much about going back to that house, considering I had been away at school, hanging out with the friends I had made, and just generally enjoying the little freedom that I had. However, that all changed when my sister and I pulled into the driveway of the house. That dark and ominous feeling instantly overwhelmed me the second that I had gotten out of the car. I couldn't figure out what it was about the place, but something definitely gave me the creeps, and I sure as hell didn't like it. My sister and I headed into the basement and up the stairs as quickly as we possibly could in the dark. At this point, my sister was equally eerie about the house since she had strange experiences of her own while I was away at school. There was one night when she was standing outside in front of the porch smoking a cigarette when she heard someone say her name. She swears that it sounded like my dad. However, it couldn't have been, considering he was at least 20 miles away. That wasn't the first time something like that happened while we were outside. There was another night, when we were outside and both heard laughing coming from below the deck. We looked over the railing with our flashlights, but no one was there. It scared the living hell out of us. We tossed our half-smoked cigarettes over the railing and ran inside. I locked the basement door and we each went to our rooms and locked ourselves in. Thankfully, the children were in my bed. I didn't mind sleeping on the floor. There was a time that my older sister woke up in the middle of the night due to a bad dream and saw a large black figure standing in the corner of her bedroom. She literally cried while telling me about it the next morning because it scared her half to death. I would often hear strange sounds coming from the basement. It was easy to hear them in my bedroom considering the basement door was 3 feet from where my room was. I did not like the basement after the ominous feeling began. After the strange sensation that we were never truly alone while down there. It was difficult for me to actually go into the basement to feed the cats because it always felt like someone was watching me. The basement was freezing, even in the summer, and the air conditioning didn't go down there. We never turned the air conditioner on in the basement. It saved money on the electricity bill that way, yet it was always cold. My best friend at the time was spending a few days with me at the house because of personal reasons. It was just the two of us in the house at this time. She was taking a shower while I was in the computer room with the doors shut. I was on the computer, fairly certain that I was writing a story for at least 10 minutes when something heavy hit the doors. I could see the shadow of someone from underneath the door. It quickly moved away, which absolutely scared the hell out of me. I waited until my heartbeat returned to normal before quickly leaving the room. I went to the bathroom where my friend was. I opened the door. No, we had no boundaries, to see if she had been the one whom had hit the door. But she was still in the shower and the carpet was not wet. She hadn't been outside of that bathroom. No one but us was in the house, so there's just one thing left for me to think. Whatever the fuck was in that house did not want me there. I personally believe that it was happening because of me, and I still don't know how to feel about it. Now, I'm at the point where it doesn't bother me anymore, but seriously, fuck all of that shit. I almost had one normal night in that house. My niece and nephew were at their grandparents' house, so my sister, my brother-in-law, and I were sitting on the couch in the living room watching the movie Sinister. We had no incidents during the entire movie. If we did, then we hadn't noticed. My sister and I cleaned up the coffee table, put the popcorn bowls into the sink, threw away the empty soda bottles, and said goodnight. I turned on the television in my room, locked my door, and was texting people for about 5 minutes before someone knocked on the door. I sat there, frozen in fear, waiting to see if another knock would come, and sure enough, it did. I remember cautiously standing up from my bed and opening the door to see that no one was there. Another knock sounded on the door as soon as I had shut it. I pulled the door back open and slowly walked into the kitchen. I had just reached the kitchen counter when my sister jumped up from behind it. I raised my arm to hit her after jumping because she scared the shit out of me. Not literally. She laughed for a few minutes, swore that she was going to bed, and watched me walk back toward my room. Her husband jumped out of my nephew's bedroom, which scared me so badly that I let out a banshee-like scream, and literally had to step outside to smoke a cigarette because my hands were shaking so badly. I had to calm down. My sister apologized to me while she stood on the back deck and smoked a cigarette with me. We quickly finished, headed inside and went to our own rooms. I was sitting on my bed for about an hour and a half before the floor outside of my bedroom door started to creak. The shadow from the kitchen light pacing back and forth while the door handle jiggled. My phone was already on vibrate, so I quickly texted my older sister, asked if she was in the kitchen messing with me again. She said no, sent me a picture of her and her husband in their room watching TV, which was absolutely terrifying, because something was outside of my room. I was very relieved when I realized both doors to the bathroom were locked, as well as the door to my bedroom, because it prevented whatever was in the kitchen from getting into my room like it so desperately wanted to. That night would be the one that escalated all of the strange-ass things happening inside of that house. It's like watching that damn movie had stirred up whatever unseen thing was living in there with us. My nephew continued to be afraid of his room. He still claimed that the man in his closet was there, even though we would check every night before putting him to sleep. One time, my older sister had put my niece down for a nap in her crib. My brother and other sister were there. We were all watching TV while my nephew played with his toys on the living room floor. My niece woke up at some point and started crying because she wanted out of that damn room. My sister walked in there to grab her and yelled for the three of us to come to the room. Me, my brother, and younger sister all ran into the room to see a knife sticking in the wall between the bars of the crib, not more than a few inches above where my niece had been sleeping. Something was trying to harm my innocent little niece. And that was the day where we all decided that there was seriously something wrong with the house. Pretty much every night there was a late night for me. I would be up in time for my nephew to knock on my door and crawl into bed with me. My niece soon became afraid of her own room. She had recently switched to a toddler bed by that time. She would wake up every night, run out of her room, and knock on mine. There was one particular night. My sister had to work a 16-hour shift. Her husband was at work. It was storming out quite badly that night. My cell phone reception was very spotty, and I still didn't have a car despite having a driver's license. My nephew was asleep in my bed. I too had fallen asleep, only to be woken up at midnight to my niece crying, yelling for me, and knocking on my bedroom door. I jumped up faster than I had ever done before, opened the door to see my niece in hysterics sitting on the floor outside of my room. I picked her up, shut the door behind me, and laid her in my bed. I soothed her back to sleep before leaving the room. I left the door open, stepped onto the back deck because I could see them, lit a cigarette, and texted my sister to see what time she would be home. My sister had texted me back, saying that she should be home in about 2 more hours, which was a relief to me. I tucked my phone into the pocket of my sweatpants and took a drag of my cigarette, only to see 3 shadows walk in front of the solar light on the porch. I tossed my unfinished cigarette into a sand-filled flower pot, stepped into the house, shut and locked the back door behind me. I locked myself in my bedroom with the kids, and not even a moment had passed before I heard the kitchen faucet turn on and dishes being moved. I slowly opened the bedroom door to see no one in the kitchen. I quickly hurried out there and turned the faucet off before hauling ass to my bedroom, scooping up the 2 kids in my arms, and carried them to the computer room. I ran back to my own room, grabbed pillows and blankets, and ran back to the computer room where I proceeded to lock the door with the lock on the handle and the old-fashioned lock on top of the double doors. I laid out the blankets and pillows on the floor, placed the kids down, covered them up, and I laid on the couch for hours until I had fallen asleep at some point. I was very thankful that the room had a thick-ass blanket hanging over the window to act as a curtain. It was scary. I was on the edge, but there was something about that specific room that made me feel safer. I woke up at 7:30 the next morning to my brother-in-law knocking on the door. I didn't bother to tell him what happened. Just that the kids and I were watching TV in that room and had fallen asleep. I did, however, tell my sister about the incident when she had gotten home, and trust me, she seemed terrified about the events that happened because she had come home later than what she told me she was going to due to her job being short on staff members. There had been many times where one of us would see shadow figures in the children's bedrooms. Thinking it was my niece or nephew, we would run after them only to find nothing. This was one of the consistent, reoccurring things that pissed us off. I can remember another day after that incident when my brother and younger sister were at the house. They were going to stay the night. My niece was taking a nap in her bedroom. My older sister went in to check on her. The blanket that had been draped over my niece was laying atop the space heater, and her closet door that had been shut was standing wide open. Something wanted my little 2-year-old niece to freeze to death. Something wanted us out of that damn house, and I wish we had gotten out at that point. But we ended up staying there for another few months. I'm not sure what the fuck was in that goddamn house, but I wish to hell that I had never stepped one fucking foot into the place. Because I have ghosts in my current house. Something has always been with me after moving out of that specific house. I don't mind the ghosts that I currently live with because they don't bother me. I know they are there, and that's what matters. I absolutely hated that house. I still do to this day. I hate that goddamn house, and I never want to step foot into that place again, but my sister's ex-husband, my niece and nephew, their other 2 brothers, and their stepmom all live in that house now. I've only been back there a few times to see my niece and nephew. It still gave me the creeps, but they seemed to be doing okay there. Like nothing had ever happened. Needless to say, my intuition has been on point since moving out of that fucking house. The moment I get a bad feeling about a situation, I actively avoid it so that I don't have to deal with the consequences. It doesn't matter whether anyone reading this believes in the supernatural or not, because I do. I have proof of it. What happened in that fucking house still gives me a bad feeling when I think about it. My nerves are about shot from writing all of this down. This is legitimately the most horrifying experience that I have ever had. Screw that house, and screw ever going back there. I honestly cannot ever go back there. If I do, please send a priest.